Welcome on a not so glorious evening to be a Tennessee Vol with Caleb Calhoun. I am Dave Hooker, and Tennessee just suffered the most costly, most disastrous, worst loss they suffered since 2001 in the SEC championship game when they lost LSU and did not advance to the Rose Bowl to play for a national championship. Caleb, that is not over speaking things. Tennessee has not been in this position since that time. And if you wanted to say one was even close, you could say the 2009 potential upset of Alabama there with Lane Kiffin. But Caleb, this to me is far, far worse than that. Expectations were high, and this program did not live up to those expectations. Now, I'm not going to start throwing kids under the bus and saying that they're terrible people or anything like that, but that's just a simple fact. This Tennessee football team was not ready to play at 7 o'clock, and they weren't good enough or prepared enough to turn things around when the score got out of hand. I'll just open it up to your thoughts, Caleb.
Yeah, to start off with what you said, I agree. This is the worst loss since that 0-1 LSU game. To some people, it's even more dejecting because it's a loss with an injury where it might be the last time we all see Hendon Hooker in a Tennessee uniform. I mean, if I'm him, I'm not coming back and playing anymore. There's no championship to play for, no playoff. Heal your leg, get ready for the NFL. And so that was also devastating. I'd have to go back with history to know if there were any other losses in the 50s, 60s, or 70s that are worse. But yeah, that was a bad one. And I think it's pretty obvious where the blame lies, and it's with the pass defense. And I'm going to give Spencer Rattler credit. Look, none of us saw Spencer Rattler doing this tonight. None of us. But at the same time, that was horrendous pass defense. And honestly, you and I have sat here, and even when Florida threw for over 400 yards, we defended Tim Banks. I think it's time to stop defending him. That was when South Carolina converted on two underneath on the same exact underneath route twice for 20 yards on a drive, including on a 3rd and 20. That was embarrassing.
Well, I got a couple of thoughts there. And first, let me address the Hendon Hooker situation. Prayers for that young man and his family, no matter what he decides to do. That it looked bad. Hopefully there are cases where it could just be a stretched ligament. There are cases where it could be a lot of different things, and I hope that he is okay. But you're right. It seems, well, we can say this: his meaningful games at Tennessee are at least over. You would think that he would go on to the NFL. You would think that even if medically he could play next week, but it certainly looks like something more serious than that. So I want to say this. He's been an incredible ambassador. Do not forget that when it comes to Hendon Hooker and what he's been able to do. Now, as for the defense, I'm not going to defend Tim Banks in this regard, but it's actually probably a little bit different than that. Well, at least in the direction you took initially. I credited Tim Banks for overcoming a bad secondary for most of the season with a lot of different looks up front, twists, stunts, different blitzes. I thought they did a lot of different things. I didn't see that in the first half, which tells me one of two things. They didn't have a good week in practice and he didn't feel comfortable about calling multiple things. That could be one. And if they didn't have a bad practice, that's the player's fault because they're thinking about the college football playoff. The other possibility is that Tim Banks wanted to play more straight up because he didn't think Spencer Rattler could beat him. That's a real possibility. I don't know if we'll ever get to the true bottom of that this week. Maybe it takes a couple of months or even spring practice for it to come out. But I think it's one of those two things. Now, we knew Tennessee's defensive backs, man on man, weren't very good, and we're going to go to the message board. I want to get your thoughts. And that proved true. What you're talking about, that little drag route, that is the toughest route in football to defend. And ultimately, if you have time, which Spencer Rattler did, then you've got time to run those. And they're really tough to defend if your quarterback's having a good day. So, before it even gets to that point, you should have pressure. Tennessee did not have pressure. And that, to me, is the most befuddling thing. And there's one other thing that's very befuddling I want to ask you about, but first, your thoughts on that.
I agree. And as a matter of fact, you bring up the pressure. I mean, Byron Young and Tyler Barron. I mean, they got to kiss any postseason awards goodbye. That was they should be ashamed of themselves too. I don't want to call them. I don't want to say ashamed. They're college kids, but that was horrendous how they played tonight. The Byron Young got a tackle for a loss. I think that was more about a busted play by South Carolina than it was anything he did. And the only time we heard Tyler Barron's name all night was when he got a hands to the face penalty to keep South Carolina on the field on a third down. And we said 2 weeks ago when Tennessee lost to Georgia that we would need to hear Byron Young's and Tyler Barron's name if the Vols were going to have a chance, and we didn't. But we thought, okay, that's just Georgia. Well, we didn't hear their names tonight either. And so
a couple of other things that I want to throw at you and some notes from the message boards. Please hit that like button. The thumbs up button helps us bring you more content, and we're going to break down this very frustrating loss, but we'll work through it together. So click on the thumbs up button, not to say you like how the game turned out, but that maybe you like us and our coverage, because I've got some things I want to get to that I think will be insightful. And I think that you'll find a couple of reasons why this loss happened. So click the like button, subscribe, and share. This offense has to look really hard at itself. And I'm talking about Josh Heupel. I'm talking about coaches, about the crowd noise issue. Okay. So supposedly this team was supposed to go out and score so fast that the crowd noise was taken out of it because they didn't have time to get amped up. I think you and I both wrote about it over the course of the season. We're dealing with 2 games on the road that Tennessee did not get off to a good start. Georgia, South Carolina. You go back to Pitt. I thought that Tennessee had some issues there. LSU, I've said this before, those kids practice in the afternoon at LSU. Tennessee practiced in the morning. You had the opening muffed kickoff. They got off to a fast start. I almost checked that one off the list. But I think there have been at least 2, maybe 3 times if you want to include the Pitt game, and I'm having trouble remembering exactly how it started off, but at least 2 that crowd noise, I believe, has been somewhat of a factor. Keith says the offense also needs to add some more to their passing tree. Keith, I could not agree more. Sorry, Caleb, go ahead. Your thoughts on what Keith said and what I said.
Yeah, I kind of disagree about this game. I mean, let's not forget. So because the Tennessee kicked off, South Carolina scored first. Tennessee scored immediately, like I think 3 plays in on their first possession. And then on their second drive, it was because Javonte Spraggins had the worst sequence of any offensive lineman all year for Tennessee. And I don't want to pile on him too hard. Javonte Spraggins has played really well for Tennessee for most of the year, but he had a bad night. And that one sequence happened, and then Tennessee's defense couldn't do anything. So, again, you have one bad sequence on one drive, and all of a sudden you find yourself down 21-7 and playing catch up. So I didn't see the pre-snap penalties that I saw against Georgia from this offense in this one. You're right about Pitt. And LSU was unique, but then I think, last year when Tennessee played Kentucky, which was kind of their signature win of the Heupel era, they started off really fast. They scored a touchdown on the first play of the game. Okay. So I think this one, I think this one was just, again, I think, again, you're going to have some drives that kind of stall, and they put up, you look up the numbers now, partially lucky because there was a tip pass, but Hendon Hooker had a pretty Hendon Hooker type first half. The defense just wasn't. I think the score was 35-24 at halftime, and so the offense put up 24 points. I mean, you expect that if you're going to put up 24 points against South Carolina, given how they've played all year, that you're going to be in control of that game if you put up 24 at halftime.
Yeah, there's something else that I want to bring up about this game that I don't know might get me criticized, but I'm fine with that. So, and that is, this offense seems different when Cedric Tillman is in the game. And I'm not blaming the young man. I thought against Georgia they tried to force it to him. He was held out last week because of precautionary reasons. I thought they tried to force it to him at times during the South Carolina game early. I'm not blaming him. I'm blaming however he is being utilized or however Hendon Hooker views him as that's my go-to guy, maybe because he is probably, well, Brew McCoy is the most physically talented, but the most decorated, the most proven before this season was Cedric Tillman, right? So maybe there's a tendency to go his way. Maybe the coaches put him in a different position. I don't know what it is. And I'm not blaming Cedric Tillman 1 ounce because I do not know. But I will tell you this offense, this passing offense, is not as fluid when he is in the game.
Do you think part of that, though, is because we saw this with Georgia 2 weeks ago and then we saw it again tonight? I don't know if you noticed how far off Cedric Tillman and the receiver, South Carolina, they were forcing Hendon Hooker to take the underneath routes and to do the crossing routes. And they were, I don't want to pile on Hendon Hooker a little bit because he's hurt and we all wish him the best. I mean, this is just analysis, but they dared him to throw over the middle. And we
Yeah.
talked about this with Chris Landry on Friday. And Landry said, he has some issues throwing the ball over the middle. And there was a key third down that he had Jacob Warren had his man beat. Hooker threw it behind him. And there were, I think, 2 or 3 almost big Jalen Hyatt plays that were thrown just a little bit behind Jalen Hyatt. And so when I say, maybe the offense wasn't as fluid, they haven't hit Cedric Tillman for the big play. I thought they were hitting him fine on the underneath routes for the most part. I don't think they weren't going to let Cedric Tillman beat them over the top. That's what we're kind of seeing.
Well, I think there's something to be said for Cedric Tillman. Yeah, I don't know if you've ever suffered an orthopedic injury, a sports type of injury, but I have. And I'm not comparing myself to him, but there's something to be said for being physically back. The doctor tells you can do everything you can do, and then you believe everything you can do. So that leads me to this comment, and then I want to get to the Jeremy Banks situation. John said Tillman is slower. Keaton makes it smoother, in my opinion. I don't know that Cedric Tillman, when they line up for the 40 before the NFL draft, if Tillman's going to be slower. As a matter of fact, I'd bet on Tillman. But as of right now, maybe upstairs because he's thinking about the injury, maybe he is a little bit slower in reactionary time because of that ankle injury. I'm not ruling that out. But if you want me to tell you who I think the bigger, faster athlete is between Keaton and Tillman, I think it's Tillman. But we shall see. And then there's a lot of hubbub about why Jeremy Banks was out. Wes Rucker, who I trust, reported that he was sick. Is that odd? Yes. Did a lot of people on Twitter, be careful who you follow on Twitter and listen to, have jumped all over the no, he was not injured nor sick. That's not true. He was mishandled in some sort of way before the game. I don't know if it's a disciplinary thing or what, but there are all kinds of rumors that are floating out there. There are also people who drove to McGee Tyson Airport and had their cameras running to see when John Gruden was landing. He never landed. Okay. So I'm just going to, that's all I'm going to say. I'm just leaving it there. I'd say the odds are that he was sick. Something was wrong. Could he have been suspended? Possibly. But I find it very, very difficult to believe with everything on the line that there's some sort of band of brothers thing that jumps up and says, oh, he was mistreated. I'm not going to play as hard as I can. That's the inference that's being made on Twitter. Caleb, I don't believe Tennessee's defensive players would do that. I don't believe Tennessee's offensive players would do that. I think that's basically just absurd.
No, I agree. I've never really bought into that. This. First of all, these kids are all trying. You're fighting, and even in college now, you're fighting for starting jobs. You're fighting for NFL draft positions. You got a playoff on the line. There's too much at stake for you to lose personally to not play well. This reminds me of the. Do you remember in 2011 when Tennessee lost to Kentucky and there was the conspiracy theory that Tyler Bray and Derrick Rogers just didn't want to go to a bowl game? So
I do remember that, yeah.
And I'm like who? I don't know who says I don't really care to go to a bowl game. So I'm just not going to play. I'm going to purposely play horrible.
Well, that one at least holds more water than I'm not going to go to the college football playoff. Ron is, I don't think either's true. Don't get me wrong, but at least that one I could at least plausible. This one is just stupid. Ron's laughing. I think he's a South Carolina fan. Tennessee, your season is over. Well, no. I mean, Tennessee can still go to the Sugar Bowl. I will say this, Ron, if you are a South Carolina fan, I will give you all kinds of credit. I did not think that Tennessee could get just straight up outplayed. I thought they'd have to fumble it away, throw interceptions, do something, Caleb, to lose this game. As it turns out, this South Carolina team came out and laid it to Tennessee for, well, essentially the whole game. Now, if you post Hooker injury, I think emotions change and everything changes. If there was any chance of a comeback, that was gone because of the emotional blow and the blow of losing one of your best players. But
And the fumble with that blow, by the way.
well, and the fumble, yeah. But even before then, I think you and I would both agree South Carolina just clearly outplayed
Mhm.
Tennessee.
Yeah, and there's one thing we kind of have to start questioning, which is I'm going to give Shane Beamer credit here on this. He and Marcus Satterfield did the exact opposite of what they've done all year, like with their game plan. They did the exact opposite, and now you start to question, were they holding Spencer Rattler back? Because that like that's an indictment of what they've done to this point. But what I'll also say is that this is the second week. This is the second time in 3 weeks, and I know Georgia was a significantly better team, but it's the second time in 3 weeks I didn't really see any adjustments made at all. At in the second half, and I'm thinking is
Now, on what side of the ball? Let me make sure we're talking.
on defense,
Okay.
but I didn't really see that much on offense either. To be fair, I'm starting to question: is this a I remember this with John Chavis back in the day, who was just he was actually pretty good at preparing for opponents. I always felt with Chavis. You always felt he had a good game plan going in, but if there was ever a wrinkle thrown that he wasn't ready for, there was always going to be a problem. We talked about that LSU game in 2001 to begin with. Let's be honest, the reason Tennessee lost to LSU in 2001 is because John Chavis had prepared for Rohan Davey, and he wasn't ready for Matt Mock in the change of pace with a running quarterback. And I don't know. I felt like Tennessee never really. There were no halftime adjustments to the fact that South Carolina is doing exactly the opposite of what they've done all year.
Um, I didn't think there were sufficient adjustments. I go back to the Georgia game. I don't think it really would have mattered, to be real honest with you. But when I think of significant adjustments, I actually, if I go back to the Georgia game, I thought they did a lot of the things that worked for them up front defensively. I just thought that they were outmanned in the secondary. With this, I mean, whether it's adjustments or off the get, I just didn't see the same. I didn't see the same thing schematically. Now, I've said this before, and I've said this on a syndicated radio show. These kids in the front seven, front six nowadays really is what it is, because you always play nickelback. But they deserve a lot of credit for playing with their hair on fire a lot. I mean, a lot. They play hard a lot, and you can't expect that every single game in and game out. It's not going to happen. It didn't happen today. And I think that there's something to be said. And I've had players on this team tell me that you do not like road games. And I'm not here making excuses, guys. So please don't paint me into that corner. There's something to be said. And I told my wife about 2 hours before this game began, I said, I've got a weird feeling about this game. Now, not like this, but I thought it would be close. And there's something about sitting there watching TCU struggle, Ohio State struggle, Michigan struggle, and you're thinking to yourself, man, you just go out there and win. I mean, if Tennessee just wins, they're probably in or maybe the top 4. But I think there's something to be said for sitting around and watching TV in a hotel room. I think there's no way to get away from it. There's no your phone, whatever. Caleb, there's no way to get away from the talk of the college football playoff before you're getting ready to play in an elimination game.
Yeah, and it's funny we've seen that before. The last time Tennessee was in this type of run, the '98 SEC championship game, that day UCLA lost to Miami.
Oh yeah,
Kansas State got upset in overtime at Texas A&M. No, they probably won't watch. I think the Tennessee game had already kicked off by the time that before the Texas A&M Kansas State game ended, but you knew they were locked in a battle. And Mississippi State gave them a fight, and it took till the fourth quarter. It took 26 seconds of, oh, we might lose this game, so let's score 2 touchdowns real fast before they finally put Mississippi State away. And I've seen a lot of that over the years. You're right. And there were a lot of early games. I could see what you're saying with that. I think the problem with Tennessee is we need to keep things in perspective, guys, which is that Tennessee is still, as we've talked about, not fully back from, everybody was getting hungry and excited about how this season went, but they are not fully back from all the attrition that hit the program last year. And where they're not fully back is in the secondary. That part's clear. And you're right. Sometimes, the defensive line and the front 6 and front 7 is not going to play with their hair on fire sometimes. And when that happens, if you're a championship team, you at least hope your secondary can come through and hold. And Tennessee doesn't have the secondary that can do that yet. They're just not equipped.
Let me go to some conversation on the message board. Tennessee Smokey saying, playing aggressive in your face on both offense and defense roughed up Tennessee. Coaches and players didn't respond. I completely agree with that. Keith does as well, saying that's real talk. Yeah, I mean, Tennessee got it taken to them. And Tennessee had proven before they could win a physical battle against Pitt. So I did think that they would respond well at halftime, but you knew pretty early in the third quarter they wouldn't. Tennessee Smokey also said, Hooker, would you say Tennessee is soft? I don't know if soft is the word I would use, Tennessee Smokey, but I would say this. I think that in that first half, Tennessee thought, it doesn't matter if down 28 points at halftime. We can come back. No big deal. We score fast. I think there was some of that mentality going on. John said Georgia showed the blueprint on how to beat this gimmick team. I'm not going to call them a gimmick team. I do think this offense, Caleb, overcomes a talent shortcoming, which Tennessee has, as you just addressed. So is this a gimmick offense? I mean, to me, a gimmick offense is what Mike Leach runs, the air raid offense. It doesn't change. I think this one can adapt and change. But right now, can they shove it down your throat and get an 8-minute drill or a 4-minute drill or an 8-minute drive every week? No, probably not. They've done it a couple of times. It was against Missouri, I think, that they did that.
Kentucky. They had that 15-play, 75-yard drive against
Kentucky. So, I mean, can they do it occasionally? Yes, but it's not going to be all the time. John says the thing that irritates me is the awful angles the defense pursues. You've kind of harped on that all year long.
Yeah, I mean, that is true. I have, and I think I mostly harped on it with the linebackers. I will say I'm going to step back for a minute. There were a couple of plays where I thought the receivers were well covered and Spencer Rattler just made a nice throw. But then there were some plays where, defensive cornerback makes the right turn. It's an interception. And as far as the soft thing, yeah, I don't think they're soft. They gave up. It's hard to say that when they gave up 63 points, but it's not like they gave up 63 points where just South Carolina was like mid-90s Nebraska and just running it down their throat. Like, if you want to, like, a team being exposed as soft was like what happened to Florida in the 95 championship game when they played Nebraska, where Nebraska just ran it down their throats and just manhandled them. South Carolina threw it all over Tennessee. I just think Tennessee has a problem in the secondary. We've been talking about it all year, and we didn't know if or when it was going to rear its ugly head. And boy, did it rear its head.
John said Banks or Martinez, referring to Tim Banks, the defensive coordinator, Willie Martinez, the defensive backs coach, more at fault.
What about?
I just got
in this game. I would go Tim Banks because that's scheming, but I think Martinez is limited with talent. I don't think he doesn't have that much talent.
They're both limited with talent. I mean, to me, this is.
I mean, I agree they're limited, but you shouldn't give up 63 points. Now, I will say that, to be fair, one of the reasons if you are limited with talent, if you're like Tennessee, you're more likely to give up more points because you run so fast on offense. The other team's going to have more possessions. So
yes, it's true.
So I will it's not crazy for, even if you're a good defensive coordinator, to have a really bad secondary. It's not crazy to think they can only force one punt in a game. And so
No.
That is.
Well, I mean, the bottom line is Tennessee got outplayed. Everything that we thought going in, at least I thought going in, that they would have to give it away was not the case. So I was off on that. I will say, like I said, I had a weird, I don't know if you did, but I just had a weird feeling a couple hours before the game that it was going to be close. And I wasn't surprised to see South Carolina actually bolt out and take the lead, but I just thought it would settle down. There was a play that when the Princeton Fant touchdown, a play that reminded me of the olden days when Tennessee had more talent. And I thought to myself, that's a really tough matchup for South Carolina, and Tennessee isn't super talented by any stretch of the imagination, but they're still more talented than South Carolina, is what went through my head. So I thought to myself, oh, well, they can come back and win this because they're still more talented and they're a better overall team. But as it turns out, I was exactly wrong. David said they got to do something about this D. It can't keep going like this. You're right. And the point is to recruit, recruit, recruit. I'm sure they'll take some transfers as well. And that's the goal, is to get this defense even close to the talent that you're seeing on this offense. And I don't know that happens by 2023, but it's got to happen by 2024 if you want me to be real honest with you.
Yeah, and let's be and let's be clear here that I'm with you. It's funny because I was watching the game when they hit Princeton Fan for the touchdown. I'm thinking, oh, it's 35-31. Tennessee's coming back. They just messed around with South Carolina in the first half. And the reason I thought that again is because I thought Shane Beamer had pulled out every single trick he had in the book in the first half. I mean, he emptied his playbook in the first half. And so remember, Tennessee forced a punt on their South Carolina's first offensive drive of the third quarter. Tennessee forced a punt. They get the ball back. They score a touchdown. You're thinking then it's 35-31. Tennessee's defense has figured out South Carolina's offense. It's over. Tennessee's about ready to just pour it on. And yeah, no, when that didn't happen, I think I don't even think was there a third down conversion on that South Carolina touchdown drive, that first one of the second half? I don't even think they got a third down.
I don't think there was.
Yeah.
No, and I'll say something else too about being prepared, Caleb. That little Dylan Sampson option play, there was several times that they had the keep and pitch man covered.
Yeah.
Credit South Carolina for their preparation. I'm not selling them short at all. They went out and won that football game. Tennessee did not go out and lose that football game. South Carolina went out and won it. Tennessee Smokey said, thanks to number 5 for all that he has done while at UT. Remarkable player who became a true leader. Best wishes going forward. Thanks. Yeah, and I agree with that completely, Tennessee Smokey. Let's be honest. In this day and age of NIL, he's probably already a millionaire. He's going to be successful in whatever he does. He wants to be a football coach one day so he can lead young men. I think that is all phenomenal. But is it a little heartbreaking that he won't get to play in the college football playoff? Probably won't be unless the injury is a lot less severe than it looks. Probably won't be at the Heisman ceremony. Probably won't be nearly as highly drafted. Yeah, all that's tough, man. For a dude that's done nothing but be a great dude. That.
Yeah, but again, you got to take perspective into account. I don't think even Hendon Hooker thought he was going to be in this position when he came to Tennessee 2 years ago. Nobody did.
Well, I agree, but if you find the perfect woman and you marry her and she leaves you, it still stinks when she leaves you.
That is true. I guess that's true.
I agree. If you keep things in perspective and you chalk it up 10 years from now, then you say, you say, if not, we made a heck of a run. Well, the 97 Vols are still saying that. Was that the Memphis year?
No, that was 96 was the Memphis year.
Yeah. Well, the 96 Vols are still saying that.
I was, to be fair though, that 96 Vols, if I were on that Vols team, I would have quit on the season too, because in 95, think about it. You go 11-1 in 95. You're top 5. You think 96 is your national championship year with Peyton Manning. And then you lose to Florida pretty much in the same way you lost to them the year before, where they just roll off like 35, whatever, unanswered on you. And then you realize the rest of the year you can't top what you did the year before. They let one slip at Memphis, happens.
The guy's elbow
I
was.
think I think that was the first game my brother ever went to.
Keith says it's not complicated offense, in my opinion. I call it passing form of the wing T. Totally agree. Instead of short runs to set up the big run, Tennessee's offense does the same with passing. I totally agree on that. I think that's exactly what it is, and it's tough to prepare for on a week in and week out basis. So we'll see. This is not the same offense, Keith. I will point this out that Josh Heupel ran at Oklahoma. This is not the same offense he ran at times at Missouri, similar to UCF. But this offense will continue to adjust. The defense will get better, and I think Tennessee's on the right path. It's just not going to be 2022 unless something insano happens in the next 8 days as far as the college football playoff. But I
I
can't
think it's
imagine. Yeah, I
even
can't.
if it comes down to 2 lost teams, they're going to look at this margin of this score and
Yeah,
there's no
and
way.
they should. And they should. He's Caleb Calhoun. Be sure to hit that like button. We'll be with you at 8:30 on Monday morning. Also scheduled to appear on our YouTube channel will be Cooper Mays and Jacob Warren on Sunday. John says, get better equals get more talent. That's right. Is absolutely right. For Caleb Calhoun, I'm Dave Hooker. This has been a presentation of